Hello everyone and welcome to the LTSS Maryland webinar. My name is Hima Puranam and in this webinar I shall be walking you through the steps to create an emergency service plan which temporarily authorizes a person who is currently not in a DDA program to receive the services effective immediately. I shall be going over the new detailed service authorization section for the emergency service plan. This functionality is available to the DDA Regional Eligibility Supervisor, Regional Program Supervisor, Regional Director from the assigned region, and DDA Director. The emergency service plan has been restructured to allow the users to enter the emergency services using the detailed service authorization section. The ESP or the Emergency Service Plan is created to support individuals who are not enrolled in any of the three DDA waiver programs, CP, CS, or FS, nor enrolled in DDA state funded program and need immediate services due to an emergency. An emergency situation form must be completed and approved for an emergency service plan to be approved. Another scenario the ESP can be created for individuals is when transition from one waiver enrollment to another is delayed and the person needs services immediately. There are several people who create, update, and review the ESP in its process for approval. It starts off with the DDA Regional Eligibility Supervisor, the DDA Regional Program Supervisor, the DDA Regional Office Director, and then the DDA Director. We begin by looking at the emergency situation form. Let's see how we navigated until here. On the left navigation pane, under Programs, you click on the DDA Emergency Situation link and you land on the page where you can add a new emergency situation form. You can do that by clicking on the Add button right here, and a new emergency situation form is created. You can then enter all the information that is required. Those are the ones with double asterisks next to them. Date of emergency call, name of the individual who makes the call, contact number, and relationship to individual. Summary of the individual situation is when the person may be on the DDA waiting list or unknown to DDA, reasons should clearly detail why emergency services start is necessary. For example, person is homeless. You shall also document how the person meets criteria for the requested emergency service plan under the determination section. You shall indicate that this individual is homeless and is currently at risk of hurting themselves or others. Once you have completed the necessary information, you shall click on the Save button at the top right. I'm just going to finish the required sections. And once I have completed the required sections, I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. I get a success message that the record has been created. This is the emergency situation form and you see a bunch of signature sections. As the DDA Regional Eligibility Supervisor, on the top right, you have the option to recommend or deny. You shall click on the recommend button to recommend this individual for emergency services as long as the person meets criteria for being in an emergency situation, which should be documented in the previous determinations emergency situation section. On clicking on recommend, you see a success message that the form has been recommended. You shall notice that the status is in progress program. This indicates that the regional program supervisor is the next person to review the emergency service plan. Under the actions column, you shall click on view. Once inside the emergency situation form, you shall see another section called Detailed Emergency Service Plan along with the emergency situation form and the signatures. This concludes the DDA Regional Eligibility Supervisors part in the Emergency Service Plan. Now let us look at the DDA Regional Program Supervisors part. The DDA Regional Program Supervisor shall now review the information submitted by the DDA Regional Eligibility Supervisor. The RO Program Supervisor can click into the person's profile and open the Emergency Service Plan. Also, when the Eligibility Supervisor submits the Emergency Service Plan, the Program Supervisor is sent an alert by the system. To see the alert from the home page, you shall click on Alerts. As you see, I have navigated to the Alerts tab and I do see an alert which reads, a DDA emergency situation form has been recommended for my client. You shall click on the hyperlink and it shall take you directly into the emergency situation form. This shall give you the opportunity to specify the duration of the emergency service plan. On the top right, you shall notice that you have one option to only deny the individual's emergency service plan. You shall notice that the detailed emergency service plan under the plan range has an edit button right here. Once you click on edit, you can select the plan start and plan end dates. The plan type indicates initial for the individual. On an initial ESP, the plan range can only be 15 calendar days. On a reauthorized ESP, the plan range can be up to 90 days. You shall choose the plan start date and plan end date. Once you have chosen for 15 calendar days for the individual, you shall click on the Save button. I have chosen 15 calendar days for the individual since the plan type is initial, and I am going to go ahead and click on Save. Adding services. Now that the plan start date and plan end date have been indicated, you shall notice that you can now add services to the detailed emergency service plan. You shall click on the Add Service button. You shall go ahead and fill out the service information section. This section needs to contain only the services that the individual needs currently. There is a limited number of services available to an individual in an emergency. Only those services can be selected. For the purpose of this webinar, let's assume the individual needs personal support services and let's add that service. I'm going to go ahead and add personal supports and a frequency. I also added scope as testing scope. You shall then select the correct provider under the provider search. For all providers that populate, you shall make the right selection by selecting the Select button to the right of the record under the Actions column. You shall now be directed to the unit calculation for 15-minute increment services. On the top, you can see unit calculation type by clicking on All or September. You can indicate the days of the month or hours for each day along with the 15-minute increments. In this example, we added hours for Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. After you have added the correct time increments, you shall click on Add Calculation button. You shall notice that it shall populate the total number of units for the month of September. The duration of the 15 days service plan. You can also edit or delete under the Actions column. When you click on Edit, it allows you to make modification to the existing service as necessary. So I did click on Edit and I made changes to the hours on Tuesday. I can now click on Update Calculation. It will update the hours for the month of September. Any changes made shall be reflected on the units. You shall notice you have billable units, total units, rate, and the service cost associated. You shall now click on Save to Service Authorization to save the information. You can now see that the information is reflected in the detailed emergency service plan under the monthly services section, and it also shows the service and provider information, the month, the service cost, and actions. The detailed emergency service plan has now been saved. You can edit or delete the service from here. Let's try and add a new service. You shall click on Add Service and make appropriate selections. I'll select Respite Care Services hour, frequency, you shall then select the correct provider under the provider search. For all the providers that populate, you shall make the right selection by clicking the Select button under the Actions column. You shall notice for the Respite Services hour, the view is a little different because it has only input for hours and it is because it is a service that is billed hourly. After you have added the correct time increments, you shall click on Add Calculation button. As you see here, I have added the hours for Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday and have added the calculation. You can also edit or delete under the Actions column. When you click on Edit, it allows you to make modifications to the existing services as necessary. This is the same as we showed you for personal supports. You shall notice you have billable units, total units, rate, and service cost associated. You can go ahead and click on Save to Service Authorization to save the calculation to service authorization. Let's add another service. You shall click on Add Service and on Add New Service page, you can click on the service title and let's take Respite Care Services Day. The frequency is daily and scope. You shall then select the correct provider from under the provider search. From the providers that populate, you shall make the right selection by clicking the Select button under the Actions column. You shall notice for the Respite Care Services Day, the view is again a little different because you can only check the boxes for the day of a week. After you have added the correct time increments, you can click on Add Calculation. You shall notice that it shall populate the total number of units for the month of September. You can also edit or delete under the Actions column. When you click on Edit, it allows you to make modifications to the existing service as necessary. This is like the service type of personal supports. You shall notice you have billable units, total units, rate, and service cost associated. Next, you shall click on Save to Service Authorization. Let's add another service. The last service you shall add is BSS Behavioral Assessment. Frequency is monthly. Add scope. From the providers that populate, you shall make the right selection by clicking the Select button under the Actions column. Click on the Next button. You now see that the person may receive BSS Behavioral Assessment throughout the duration of this initial emergency service plan. The annual service cost is displayed for you. It is important that you click on Save to Service Authorization to add this service to the emergency service plan. Now that you have added all the services, you can review them in the detailed emergency service plan under monthly services. You, as the DDA Regional Program Supervisor, can proceed with recommending this service. After plan range and monthly services have been entered and saved, you, as Program Supervisor, may review to make your recommendation. If you have no changes, click Recommend or Deny on the top right corner if you want to deny. Please note that prior to adding the plan range and monthly services, you only had the option to deny the emergency service plan. After the plan range and monthly services have been added, you as the DDA Regional Program Supervisor can now make a recommendation. You shall now go ahead and review the form to see if you want to make any changes. You shall now click on Recommend and recommend the service plan. If recommended, the emergency service plan shall be sent to the regional director for review. The status on the form shall change to pending regional director review. Now let's look at the part of DDA Regional Office Director. The regional director shall receive an alert when the form has been submitted for their review. The regional director can access the alerts by navigating to the Alerts tab from the home page of LTSS. The regional director can directly access the emergency situation form by also going into the client's profile or via the alert that was sent. When clicking on the hyperlink here, you'll be navigated to the emergency situation form. Once you click into the form, you should see that all the information in the emergency situation form and the detailed emergency service plan has been filled out. Under the signature section, the regional office director can see that both the regional office eligibility supervisor and regional office program supervisor recommended the service or services to be provided for the individual. The regional director can review the services in the detailed emergency service plan and must either choose to recommend or deny the emergency service plan. Once an emergency service plan has been recommended, then the status of the form shall now show pending DDA director review. As you see here, the status now shows pending DDA director review. Now let us look at the part of a DDA director. The DDA director shall receive an alert once the plan has been submitted for their review. As you see here, the DDA director has received an alert for the client. The DDA director can access the form by going into the client profile or via the alert that was sent when the form was submitted by the regional director. From the home page, you shall click on Alerts. In that Alerts tab, you shall see the individual that requires the attention of the DDA director. Click on the hyperlink and it shall take you directly into the DDA emergency situation form. Right there on the emergency situation form, the DDA director can see all the information about this emergency situation and the detailed emergency service plan. Under the signature section, the DDA director can see that the regional office eligibility supervisor, regional office program supervisor, and the regional office director have recommended the service or services to be provided for the individual. As the DDA director, you can review the services in the detailed emergency service plan and must either choose to recommend or deny the emergency service plan. If the DDA director chooses to recommend this plan, the next and final step is to click the Approve button. The status of the plan changes to approved and the effective date shall show the plan status as set to active. The individual can then be authorized to start to receive emergency services indicated in the emergency service plan, and the provider selected shall be able to bill for the services they provided. This concludes our webinar for the emergency service plan, which temporarily authorizes a person who is currently not in a DDA waiver to receive the waiver services effective immediately. Thank you.